Hello and welcome to Never Mind the Ballots, brought to you today with the greatest minds of the Sun newspaper and in association with our friends at Betfair. Well, it's what we all feared. A bunch of ambitious vultures picking over the bones of our zombie Prime Minister. Meanwhile, in the real world, seemingly an alien place to the modern Labour Party, well, the people are giving their verdict. The pound is sliding against the dollar. Borrowing costs are going up. Investors are eyeing Britain with a kind of nervous suspicion usually reserved for a banana republic. At the very moment tensions with Iran are threatening global energy supplies and sending oil markets into fresh panic, Westminster is dragging out their Labour psychodrama for even longer. Because while the world worries about shipping lanes and energy shocks and inflationary aftershocks, MPs are once again consumed with what MPs love the most, themselves. The self-appointed King of the North, Andy Burnham, a personification of a union-backed left-wing leader who spends. Well, he has hardly reassured anyone watching Britain's finances. Investors do not see ideological romance in these leadership manoeuvres. They see higher spending, higher borrowing, more state intervention and more instability. In short, an economic basket case. For a British economy already fragile after years of weak productivity, sticky inflation and mounting pressure on household bills, rising gilt yields are not some abstract city concern. They mean more expensive mortgages, more pressure on public finances, less room for tax cuts, less confidence in Britain as a place to invest. And the irony is brutal. Labour came into office promising stability. Stun readers were far from alone in wanting change, competence, and frankly, a bit of bloody peace and quiet. And they're far from alone in quickly realising we have been sold a pup. Instead, we're now watching another opening act of another leadership bloodbath. Exactly the sort of spectacle that Britain spent years being mocked at during those torrid Tory civil wars. Only this time, the stakes are even higher. Because lurking behind the less manoeuvring is a much bigger question. What happens when this Starmer project collapses completely? Well, the unions smell further leverage. And suddenly the floodgates are open again, once again to figures who were supposed to have been permanently exiled after those awful Corbyn years. Hardliners who see every crisis as proof that Britain needs more nationalisation, more spending, more borrowing and more hostility to business and an ideological confrontation with those crucial money markets. These markets are not sentimental. The last time Britain flirted so openly with unfunded ideological economics, the consequences were swift and they were ugly. Sterling was punished, pension funds wobbling, international confidence evaporated in Britain almost overnight. Now just imagine that scenario colliding with a Middle East energy shock. Iran tensions are already pushing oil prices higher, while Labour civil war at home convinces investors in Britain we are lurching sharply leftward. That is a nightmare cocktail that is haunting traders in the city right now. Geopolitical instability abroad paired with political instability at home. Yet Labour still struggles to understand these basics. Global capital can move far faster than any of their political sloganing. Investors don't wait patiently for party conference and for an end to factional debate. They are hitting sell, they're hitting the button today. Britain needs to project competence and seriousness and stability in order to attract investment in an increasingly volatile world. Will Labour contain the chaos before the country pays the price? Of course they won't. The lunatics are taking over the asylum as we watch on in horror. Nigel Farage told me this week reform is ready for government. You know what? He better be right. He could be stepping over that door at number 10 even sooner than he imagined. We have got a great show for you today. Coming up, the voice of the Sun, Colin Robinson, youth vote activist Alex Cairns. But first, a man that has had absolutely zero sleep for the last 96 hours, Jack Elsom, the political editor of the Sun. Jack, what a week.
It has been just the most crazy week I think I can remember, Harry. I mean...
Since the last one.
Since the last one. I think only Boris Johnson's resignation really rivals this week, where we just
Liz Truss was pretty lively too.
Yeah, I guess so. But I guess that was a quick death. Whereas with Boris Johnson, you just had those few days where MPs, ministers were resigning. And we saw that with Keir Starmer as well. Just the slow drip of Labour MPs going over the top, and then just the floodgates opened. And the fact that we're now at 100 MPs. I mean, you get people in Downing Street that are saying, it's only 25% of the parliamentary party. And you're like, guys,
if a quarter
25%
if a quarter
of the parliamentary
if a quarter of an
party.
office tried to, give the boss a P45, I think they'd have something to say. Look, it was just about calming down a little bit. The resignation of Wes Streeting plus the announcement that Burnham would seek his return in Greater Manchester sort of has delayed things a little bit. But let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at what the world thinks. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump said just moments ago.
Do you think Starmer's going to survive as Prime Minister?
It's a tough thing, unless he can straighten out immigration where he's weak, and if he doesn't start drilling and stop with the windmills all over the place that are causing havoc. They're causing havoc. Most expensive form of energy. They kill the birds. They're unsightly. They're ruining the landscape. If he doesn't stop with the windmills, he's got to do energy. He's got to open up the North Sea. He's got one of the greatest oil finds anywhere in the world. And he's not using it. And I tell him that. He's not using it.
Should he quit?
The oil companies call me every day. Please, we want to go to the North Sea. He doesn't allow it to happen.
Should he quit?
I don't say that. I think he's a nice man, actually.
It's not a great look for Britain, is it? I know Donald Trump's got to be in his bonnet about Keir Starmer, but he kind of gets what everyone's saying there, doesn't he? He's a nice guy, but it's going to be very tough for him to survive. Prime Minister's a goner, right?
Yeah, and also I do think that Donald Trump is good in these situations because he paints in primary colours. He clearly doesn't know the ins and outs of the PLP and the machinations going on in Westminster.
I'm not sure anyone does now.
But he does know Keir Starmer's problems.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons Keir Starmer was walloped in those local elections last week at the hands of Nigel Farage is one, because the government hasn't stopped the boats, and two, because their energy bills are too high.
Yeah.
And on both counts, Donald Trump is saying, you need to sort out illegal immigration and you need to start drilling in the North Sea to bring people's bills down. And so on that front, he's nailed it.
Well, exactly. He's a politician that says it like it is. People don't necessarily like it, but, he leads. Is there anyone, from Andy Burnham to Angie Rayner to Wes Streeting to Al Khan's, the names we're hearing that could replace the Prime Minister in the coming weeks? None of them are communicated like that. None of them are going to say exactly what Donald Trump says, which is, here's the problem, bills are too high, borders are too porous.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, all of them are going to be hostages to a now increasingly muscular and mutinous parliamentary Labour Party.
And the unions are back.
Yeah, exactly. Here we know all tilt to the left, right? And so no matter who gets in, I think Streeting's chances, fairly or unfairly, have probably been diminished as a result of this week. And I think you're probably looking at a scrap where either Andy Burnham comes in. If he wins in Makerfield, then I think that they're going to coronate him within a few weeks. He's not coming back to be a backbencher and sit on the Health Select Committee.
It's an absolute freaking stitch-up then, isn't it? Why should 85,000 people in Makerfield, as patriotic and glorious and reading The Sun every day, I'm sure, as they are, but why should only they get to decide who the next Prime Minister is? He's going to have a general election.
Well, you can talk about democratic accountability, and I think that is right at a separate point. But if you are just Labour MPs now, and you have someone that can see off the threat from reform when reform are breathing down their necks in the majority of their seats, then you're going to go for the proven winner. Now, in terms of a general election, clearly there's going to be a groundswell of calls for it. All of the calls which were made during the Tory years by people like Andy Burnham, by people like Angela Rayner, saying that it is democratically outrageous that a few thousand Tory members can decide the next Prime Minister, all of those words are going to be thrown back in their faces, and there will be, you can just tell, Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch, they're going to be the ones pressuring the government to call that general election.
Let's have a look at Nigel Farage, because there's a man I saw yesterday, he had quite a big grin on his face, and he thinks that this mob, quote, won't last 3 years. Let's see what he had to say.
This mob won't last 3 years.
You reckon?
No, I think there is a bad time coming economically for the UK, and it's not very far away.
Jack, there's only one man laughing in Britain right now. It's Nigel Farage. If this carries on, the people of Britain gave a very clear message last Thursday. They painted the map turquoise. These were the same places that delivered Brexit. And Keir Starmer stands up and says, more Europe. We're going to ram ourselves right into the centre of Europe. He's trying to hand the keys to that bloke, isn't he?
Yeah, totally. It's a gift for Nigel Farage, what Keir Starmer is doing. But I can't see any other leader who might emerge in Downing Street because of the Labour Party who will change course. Because I think they are so muscular now, the PLP, that they will just demand more Europe. Don't underestimate, though, some of the MPs who were elected in the Red Wall, some of the more sane ones, are tearing out their hair. Jonathan Hinder, one of the more sensible backbenchers...
He actually doesn't have any hair.
Went on... Well, he is bald.
If he had hair, he would be...
He's tearing out his monotherical hair.
He's tearing all of his hair out.
His ears are
bleeding. That's how desperate
because...
he's literally just balled it all out.
He made the very good point, how on earth can a response to a historic drubbing at the hands of the chief Brexiteer in Britain be to drag us closer to the European Union? It just seems absolutely stark as a political strategy. And I just think that for Nigel Farage now, he clearly got the bit between his teeth. I do think that there are questions about him professionalising, getting some of his policies in tighter order, addressing questions which you asked him, which he didn't seem to have proper answers to. Those are going to... At the moment, it's fine, right? It's all built on vibes. You know what Nigel Farage is going to do. You know he's going to get rid of immigration. You know he's going to deport people. You know he's going to get rid of the woke nonsense. At the moment, lots of the policies seem to be built on sand, and I think that it is incumbent on him, as we get closer to that election, come under more scrutiny and also start putting some flesh in the bones of some of the policies.
Well, you can see that full interview we did with Nigel Farage. It's flying online, the Sun's YouTube channel right now. We had a good 30 minutes with him. We covered a lot of what Jack just said there about the future plans. He said he's 2/3 ready for government, but I wonder whether that might come sooner rather than later. But frankly, the other thing I'm thinking is, what the hell are the punters thinking about? And joining us to discuss all of that, he's arrived. He's sweeped in from the newsroom. It's Sun columnist Colin Robertson. Colin, I mean, Jack's been right there in the thick of it all week, right? He's been there, up close. Step back. What's the public thinking of this? What's the postbag like?
I have to say, I'm glad you were introducing me earlier on as the voice of the Sun, because if you were introducing me as the voice of Sun readers, you'd be beeping out every second word I said. I tell you, they're absolutely livid. This whole thing has just enraged them. And look, we hear from them every day, our readers, our wonderful readers, and they tell us, when's Starmer going to go? It's an absolute, cluster F, and all the rest of it. They're not short of opinions on this stuff. And then this week, you have this terrible situation where you've got all these people fighting, trying to get the keys to number 10. You've got him doing a reset speech. And I think they see all this stuff and they think, hang on a minute, who's he talking to here? Who are these people talking to? They're all taking pot shots at each other. They're all desperate for the big prize, but they don't seem to... But what about us? We're still skint. We've still got all these problems. And you're sort of thinking, am I going to get a seat so I can stand and I can be... The King of the North comes down, all this stuff. They think, we're sick of it. They're absolutely sick of it. And I don't blame them. The postbag has been bulging this week in a way that I've not seen it for months.
Bulging, go on, Jack. You're laughing at the word bulging.
I said I went to this speech earlier this week on Monday, and this was meant to be Keir Starmer's make or break speech. Prime Ministers usually, when they do these speeches, they come in to any given venue within about sort of 2 minutes of them bouncing up on stage, and then they give their speech. Keir Starmer arrived to this one an hour early, and we were in a little media holding pen beforehand for the make or break speech of Keir Starmer's career. And we can actually see him practicing his speech for like an hour beforehand. And then they put a screen up in front of where the journalists' holding pen were, because we were leering over and they spotted that we were watching it. So the fact that Keir Starmer knew that this was such a massive moment and then came out with some youth guarantee scheme they've already announced and some reheated announcement about British Steel just seems totally crackers. He knew it was a big moment.
I'm gobsmacked that he was actually practising that. I mean, you could see him there when he was doing his, now I'm angry. I'm really angry.
It's like the old strong message here on the audio cue.
Exactly.
My favourite moment was when Mr. Process just basically became... It was the only time that Keir Starmer's obsession and love with process became his actual strength. Because it's like, there's a process to get rid of me and you haven't got the numbers, and so therefore I am protected. It was like...
I can be a lawyer here.
Yeah, it's like the one time his complete inability to think on his feet has actually saved his arse.
And also saved him in that cabinet meeting where everyone was expecting the cabinet to say their bit about how his time is up, and he basically addressed it at the top and then just said, right, on with the agenda. What do you think about the Strait of Hormuz? And then everyone in the cabinet room, from people that I've spoken to, were just sort of looking around and thought it was the most weird meeting they've ever been to in their life, where they're going through discussions and contingency planning about the Middle East, important as it is, ignoring the massive political element in the room, which is obviously the imploding premiership, which is collapsing before their very eyes.
It's almost
farcical. This is very kind of modern politics and very Keir Starmer. I'm going to give a speech and I'm standing in front of 100 sort of clapping seals who are just going... You know, whereas if he actually wanted to kind of finely tune that speech, stick him in a room with our readers, just 20 of our readers, and just gauge the reaction. You say you spent an hour on it. Why not spend 20 minutes in front of some Sun readers, or just some normal people off the street, and see how your points land, and then finesse it that way? Because that's his problem. He's not communicating to a room full of Labour apparatchiks.
And frankly, hacks and journalists.
He's talking to Great Britain there, and they're saying, we're sick of you, mate, and you're coming out with all this stuff now, and we're even more sick of you. And that is how people are feeling. Whatever he does, it just makes things worse.
Well, you say the post bag is bulging. Jack, you've seen the chaos up front. We've got some data. As Westminster Centre to Chaos, our friends at Betfair have been teaming up with YouGov to find out what the nation really thinks. Now, this is going to be a big summer for the country. Not just because we get to have another Labour leadership election or indeed a general election, it's because of the World Cup. And so let's have a look and see what Britain thinks about the football compared to, well, the other number 10.
Definitely not Keir Starmer. He's useless all round.
Who do you trust more to deliver for their country, Cole Palmer or Keir Starmer?
Oh, good question.
Not Keir Starmer.
Can I pick neither?
I mean, obviously Cole Palmer.
I don't know who they are.
Oh, definitely Keir Starmer.
Even though I'm a United fan, has to be Cole Palmer.
Who do I trust to deliver for my country?
Keir Starmer. Cole Palmer's he's hot and cold.
I would trust Cole Palmer, because he always does deliver. Cole Palmer if he learns to shoot a penalty.
Cole Palmer. Starmer out. Tomorrow. Where is he?
There you have it. The country backs Palmer over Starmer. 35% trust Palmer to deliver for the country, just 29% for Sir Keir. 70% say Harry Kane delivers better under pressure than Keir Starmer. Colin, 2024, the Euros was dominated by a general election campaign going on at the same time. Is the British public going to forgive another summer when we're meant to be cheering on England, and we're going to be forced to watch these pygmies try and replace a zombie?
It's a pattern of behaviour, isn't it? It's almost like they're sitting there going, when's the next major football tournament? We'll have a big to-do about that time. It's funny, actually, when we were talking earlier on, you talked about Boris Johnson's resignation, but the previous Boris Johnson's resignation, when he left Theresa's government, and that was on the eve of a World Cup semi-final. And we did this great front page splash.
I think we might have the front page, but keep going,
And what was that? Well, hang on a minute, we could be winning the World Cup here. We're in the semi-final. We haven't done this for so long. We're going to end this year's hurt.
It does seem to feel like, as a country, we're cursed in the fact that every time the football starts up, we slip into political chaos.
I have to say, Harry, just to go on that point, when these things do go, when there is a kerfuffle, we tend to do quite well. So maybe, if this keeps going, gets more angry, we might get to that final and might pick up that trophy.
I'm told that Keir Starmer is unable to attend Arsenal these days because of the fans keep chanting. Every time he walks in, they see him, he starts up a good old chorus of Keir Starmer is a beep. But 61%, according to Betfair, say that winning the World Cup would bring the country together, and just 33% say a change of government. Jack, the punters are just, they're sick to the back teeth of this. They're not interested in any of this machinations, are they?
No, they're not. And, for a Prime Minister that said that his government would tread far more lightly on people's lives in terms of their aptitude for politics, we've had anything but. And, it is quite, I think, poetic that you had a Prime Minister that came into power not on any single policy or vision or Starmerism, except the fact that he was this antidote to Tory chaos and sort of infighting. And what we've seen since July 2024 is just all manner of scandals, be them personal or be them policy. And the fact that he basically seems to be leading a government which is even more chaotic and turbulent than Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, really, I think, is just why he doesn't have anyone around him now, and he doesn't have any sort of driving vision keeping him in place. It is just pure chaos, isn't there?
It is chaos. I mean, there's a really interesting stat here. 78% say they're more likely to stick with their football team when the football team's doing badly than they are with their chosen political party. That's the world we're in now. I mean, what we saw last week with the local elections is that the red wall collapsed again. Boris Johnson broke the red wall by Brexit broke the red wall by sweeping through Labour heartlands with the Leave vote, and then Boris Johnson was able to capitalise at the end, and then Labour won it back last time. And then it looks like, for Reform about to sweep it, given the local elections, they were winning in places that Brexit and Boris went far further into those deindustrialised former Labour heartlands in the north. Everything is so fluid. I mean, no one can rely on block votes now. Andy Burnham is going to be in a similar situation as Keir Starmer because the Labour Party are in the doldrums just as ever.
Yeah, the political map has just been redrawn since Brexit, and that's because we don't have that traditional left-right anymore. And also, when you had a two-party system where it was Tories attack Labour, Labour attack Tories, there are seats which will always vote Tory, there are seats which will always vote Labour, and they essentially try and compete over a few dozen of seats in the middle of England. Now voters are so much more mobile. So in those working class seats up in the north, there were ones before that would never countenance voting Tory. They then voted for Boris Johnson. They're now voting for Nigel Farage. But Nigel Farage is winning seats that not even Boris Johnson could have dreamed of.
No, totally.
Nigel Farage is winning areas in Merseyside, which, a Tory can't even walk down the street there these days. I just think that, at the moment, I do think that there's going to be there is a realignment of politics, and at the moment, the winners are going to be those minor parties, largely Nigel Farage at the moment, is going to pick up the pieces.
Let's talk about what the more important winner. Betfair predicts. The verdict is in on a number of things. Will England win the World Cup, Colin?
100%.
100%? Yeah, I'm afraid you are out of touch with Britain. They say only 88%. There's 88% chance.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite high. That's quite high. If that's people being realistic, saying, yep, I think 88%. I mean, we all think and hope we're going to win it. That's where I'm coming from. 100%
all right.
in.
Jack, Betfair predicts. What do you reckon they predicting the odds are for Andy Burnham to be the next Prime Minister?
I'm going to say it's probably about 5-2.
What's that in old money?
3-1. 3-1.
No, they say it's he's got a 51% chance. So he's basically, is that evens? Yeah, it is evens. Spot quiz. Who do you think the punters are backing?
I think they're going to back Reform.
No, the betting market says that Labour have a 56% chance of winning. Reform on 43. No?
I mean, a 5,000 majority is what they won in 2024. I mean, I think Nigel Farage can easily assail that, even though we know Burnham is pretty popular locally. Makerfield is different to urban Manchester. It's 65% leave, I think it was. I just think that for Andy Burnham, who said he wants to go back into the European Union, if Nigel Farage can make it about Brexit, he can make it about immigration, make it about grooming gangs, he can do very well. The one thing he doesn't have this time, which was his message in the local elections, was vote for Reform to get rid of Starmer. He can't say that this time.
Now it's vote Reform.
He can't say
Reform, stay Starmer.
Exactly.
Will Keir Starmer come in and campaign for Reform?
It's a topsy-turvy by-election because Keir Starmer presumably wants to throw the by-election so that Andy Burnham can't come back. And the best way of doing that is campaigning on the doorstep.
So, Colin, they keep talking about Andy Burnham having this great, this personal brand, this personal popularity. Are Reform in danger if they turn it into a referendum on Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, and then he wins it? He's in a pretty good place to say, well, I can take on Reform. I can beat Reform in Makerfield. I got told off on Talk Radio for that yesterday. I can beat Reform here. I can beat Reform anywhere.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see which candidate they put up, Reform, to go against Andy Burnham. I mean, what Andy Burnham is somebody that kind of does exude a level of competence, especially compared to the rest of the shower we've got in the government at the moment. And I think that's so he's coming into it in a fairly, you have to say, a fairly sort of strong position. So, yes, if he does win this, then he's not just the king of the north, is he? He could be the king of the north, south, east and west.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. It's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer's days are, I think we can officially declare that Keir Starmer's premiership is now zilt. Finny. I mean, so realistically, June could be the by-election. June 18th is the date I'm hearing. Possibly, are they really going to want to let this slip into July? So Starmer, is looking at what? Out by conference? They don't, it sounds like they don't want to humiliate him. It sounds like some sort of deal has been done behind the scenes to right, let Burnham come back. They're not going to block him from standing in this seat. Hopefully he wins it. And then, he could be in Downing Street by, September?
Yeah, I'm sure conference is the timetable that they'll work to. I mean, if anything, just the finances make sense. It will mean the conference is a massive money spinner for the Labour Party if they have a hustings there and then potentially an announcement.
But what if they do a coronation?
Day.
I mean, we're just going to have Keir Starmer whistling Dixie in Downing Street for the summer?
Well, I think that Andy Burnham, if he manages to win, and so therefore there would be some sort of contest, will almost certainly walk it because he can, as Colin said, show that he can beat reform. I don't see him going it alone, though. I'm sure there will be other candidates who will throw their hat into the ring.
I think you're going to have a weird summer as well. I think we're going to have a tough summer in this country. I mean, hopefully, we're going to do great success in the World Cup. But there's other stuff hiding.
Yeah,
the economy's tanking.
The oil crisis pushing up holidays, cost of holidays,
and the new fuel bills will start kicking in as well. And the in-tray for summer does not look good. So nobody wants that.
Football aside.
Football aside, it's brilliant. But once you come out the other side of that, and we're parading around London with a trophy in our hands, the rest of the country is going to the dogs. And it will be whoever's sitting in number 10, which will be Keir Starmer, to think, Christ. So it's not going to be an easy ride for him. For certain.
We've had many of you been commenting on our YouTube channel about what's been going on this week, and I'd have to say, Colin, your finger is on the pulse of the nation, as ever. Howard Jones says Nigel Farage is a man of the people. The establishment are relentless in their aims to finish him. Maggie says my area has always been Labour. Thank goodness for the first time last week we went reform. Donald, and I presume this is Donald Trump, says the issue is we don't have politicians who know what they're doing, and they're all feathering their own nest with taxpayers of cash and turning into millionaires off the back of a complete and utter failure. Brian Stubberfield says the past few days have only emphasised how completely inept, corrupt, deceitful and delusional our politicians are. A million miles away from the normal world where the normal working classes live. I mean, I could sit here for an hour and read that sentiment is there. You're so right. People are pissed off, right? They wanted change. They've been asking for change in 2016, they asked for change in 2019, they asked for change in 2024. And what have they got? More of the same.
And this is what happens with... You had Farage on yesterday, and you put the questions to him about the £5 million crypto and all the rest of it. And, the left would have it that this is an enormous story and we should pay more attention to this and that, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, reform voters, in the main, could not care less. I made some comments about this last week, and I had people emailing me in, tweeting me in, sort of saying, spot on, absolutely, we don't really care, we're sick of this government, that's not a problem to us, we want someone who's got our interests at heart.
Yeah.
So what, they took £5 million and whatever. Ultimately, this is, they see Nigel Farage as somebody who's talking to them in their language and saying, do you know what, guys, come with me, I'll fix this for you, because they're not.
Exactly. And Jack, final point, I mean, careful what you wish for if you're a critic of Nigel Farage. If they really are going to drag him through the, through the stands, I mean, look what happened with Donald Trump when they tried to jail him, block him, and render him unable to run. He won, and he won big. If Nigel Farage threw in the towel and said, fine, we'll have a by-election in Clacton, he would, I'm not going to swear, he would walk it.
Yeah, he would. And I think that, Nigel Farage has almost got that Teflon ability like Donald Trump with his base. Donald Trump famously said that he could stand up in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot two people and he wouldn't lose a single vote. And that is basically what we're seeing with Nigel Farage. I think he needs to take that next step where he makes sure that everything about reform is squeaky clean, there's no skeletons in the closet, there's no flaws in terms of their policy, because, you and I have spoken to him, he is worried about delivery in government because he knows that he's made these vast promises. Some of them are absolutely vast, especially to do with migration. And he knows he's going to come up against the courts and the lawyers. And he also knows that his voters his voters will be impatient.
Yeah.
Right? They will be impatient. And so he is putting a lot of legwork now into making sure that he can hit the ground running on day one. And I hope to God he's doing it, because if Nigel Farage fails in Downing Street, and that's what the voters voted for, then
things get very dark very quickly. Colin Robertson, voice of the Sun, voice of the people, Jack Elsom, our man on the ground. Before you go to sleep, I'm going to buy you a pint after this very show. But
a few, I hope.
A cracking week of top reporting. Colin on the money as ever. Now, are the kids all right? We've talked about the punters. What does the youth vote think? Joining me now is Alex Khan, CEO of the Youth Vote. Alex, the kids all right?
Yes, there are, Harry. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, I'm very tired and I'm ready for my pint with Jack Elsom. But no, what a week. We always look at the focus on, older voters and working voters and all of these different blocks. What's the youth vote look at when they see yet again another administration slip into the sort of carnage and chaos that we've been used to under the Tories?
Yeah, the thing that's upsetting for me is I think you guys talked about it. Like, it's just such a shame that we've got such a ton of politicians that only care about themselves. And, unfortunately, there is a small minority of good politicians that actually do good work and obviously do a lot of work that will benefit young people. Obviously, there's a ton of young people that rent, for example. So there's been some good there. But it's frustrating because, a lot of young people find it boring. And the work that my organization, lots of organizations try and do is to actually fundamentally get them interested in politics and want them to stand and be engaged. And when they see stuff like this, they're like, oh, it's just a bit of a joke, So it's frustrating to see yet again another political party infighting. It's disappointing for sure.
One of the bills we had in the King's speech, that sort of weird King's speech where the King stood there and said, "Oh, my government will X and Y," and we don't even know who the government's going to be in 12 months, let alone 12 hours at that point. I'm going to say the votes for 16 bill was in there. You could basically say that when Labour were sort of pushing this, there was a big old political advantage in that. There's a traditional vote, idea that kids are on the left, where and then they start paying taxes and start going to work, start paying mortgages, they shift more to the right. It looked like kind of naked political ambition from the Labour Party to back that bill. But that looks like it could blow up in their faces now, doesn't it? I've seen polls where Reform are doing very well amongst young men, and the Greens are doing very well amongst younger women.
I mean, even if it does, though, I do think it's the right thing to do.
Especially
Is it, though? No, well, look, for 17-year-olds, for example, a bunch of them are working part-time, potentially some of them are going to go into degree apprenticeships very soon, next few months when they're near 18. These people are very active. And by the way, with social media, there are so many young people that are so that they know what's happening in the country, right? So whether the Labour Party have done it to try and get votes, of course they have, right? But if it doesn't benefit them, I still think history will look back and actually show it was the right thing to do to get young people involved, because these are future leaders, Harry, right?
Yeah, but if you can't smoke, you can't shag, you can't go to a pub, you can't drive a car, why the hell should you be allowed to decide who sets those rules?
Because, look, let's be really honest, right? I actually think I've got more confidence in 16 and 17-year-olds that know what's in the country than some 50, 55-year-olds. Honestly, I reckon if you did a poll, you would see so many people that are older that actually don't look at the news, don't know what's going on, and just, actually young people are very, tapped into what's happening because of social media. So I reckon if you poll people, you'd be surprised, Harry.
Oh, what do you reckon my idea? I want to pitch this one to you. I've always thought that actually, if you're paying no taxation without representation, right? If you're 16 years old, and it's getting harder to do that full time, but some people still do. If you're working in your job and you're paying taxes, you should get the vote. But if you're in full-time education and you're being subsidised by the state, you shouldn't. Well, if you're paying tax, have a vote. If you're living off the taxes, no, sorry, you have to wait. What do you think about that one?
No, look, I actually, broadly agree. I think it's a bit complicated because obviously there are some students that do potentially do some sort of work. But I know what you mean. If you haven't gone into the full-time university, path, and you've gone into work straight away, I do think in fairness, you do have more of a right. Yes, because you're paying into the system and therefore you're actually going to have a bunch of policies that are going to affect you. And you've got a right to say actually what you agree and don't agree with. But where it becomes complicated, though, is I don't think this whole, look how many people get the vote when they're older and they are on the dole, right? You don't want to get into that situation just to penalise young people.
Well, I mean, look at the reliance of voters on politicians on the pensioners' vote. A lot of them are not paying taxes anymore. Yes, they've paid in their whole lives, but look at things like the triple lock. There's a reason that is a political third rail is because there's a lot of pensioners.
Yeah, no, and I get it, right? I think, but what does upset me is a lot of people think, oh, yeah, young people don't know what they're voting for, they shouldn't get a vote, and I just think. Yeah,
but I mean, people, there's lots of very good high quality content on TikTok, not least Never Mind the Ballots and other products available from the Sun. I'm sure you put lots of very good, useful things out there on different and new platforms, but there's also a load of shite, right? There's bilge and fake news and unverified stuff, and frankly, completely biased and unverifiable content. If people are getting their sort of information from that, is that really a good idea to then give them a say over the future of the country?
Well, look, actually, talking about lots of things that get put on social media that are nonsense, a lot of it actually comes from Reform, right? I see lots of videos I can't believe what they're talking about, right? I saw a video the other day where they're talking about it's going to cost 230 billion around the 800,000 people that are going to be given the indefinite leave to remain. I mean, what sort of nonsense is that, right? But it gets put on TikTok and then a bunch of people are like, oh, I can't believe that, 230 billion. Where's that figure? How are we going to pay for it? You know?
And then on the flip side, though, you got Zach Polensky and his band of merry men and merry women and everything in between, as far as it seems. They're all, pumping out and saying, we can tax the billionaires, we can soak the rich. And that's just as nonsense. Billionaires are fleeing this country. Business is already taxed at the highest level since in peacetime, and yet they sort of get a free pass. They can offer fantasy economics, and everything will be fine, just with a wave of a magic wand.
Don't get me wrong. I know that some of the left parties do put stuff out that is unrealistic, but the major difference is they don't make up false numbers like a lot of the right-wing parties do. I mean, the immigration thing is a good example, right? I've seen in the past videos from right-wing political figures on socials where they're saying 1 million people came over the small boats. Not true, by the way, but if it gets put on socials...
Well, 200,000. We've now hit 200,000 since 2018. It's only going in one direction, isn't it?
I mean, it's going in one direction, yes, but the figure that gets put out is a lot higher, right? And actually what happens is people forget there's lots of students in that net migration figure, for example, lots of skilled visas that are granted every year. So what happens is right-wing put stuff out that suits their narrative. They don't actually give the detail because they don't want to give the detail because 200,000 in 7 years is not the same as 1 million a year. It doesn't sound as sexy, right? And
1.2 million people did come legally to this country in 2022. But let's move on. We're running out of time. I want to leave you with a final point. That vote for 16 bill looks like it's going to go through. I can't imagine any replacement Labour Prime Minister saying they're not going to do it. But do you think that Labour might not have that? They might be kind of come to regret this in political terms because the rise of the Green Party is mainly fueled by by younger voters, and there is a very distinct number. I saw as high as 18% at one point of 16 to 18-year-olds that would vote Reform.
Yeah, look, Reform are popular with young men, there's no doubt, right? But also, you've got the Green Party and Labour potentially under Andy Burnham that would be still popular, right? So I think it's not a done deal. I think people love to dig into polling, but remember, polling is just polling, right?
Well, we saw a pretty big poll last week that was pretty comprehensive.
I mean, look, I'm not going to dispute the polls, right? The polls are the polls. I know the young people are making up their mind at the moment, but look, young people are a bit like football teams. They can be up and down. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few months, right?
Well, yeah, the Betfair say 78% of people would rather stick with their football team than they would their political party. Alex, thanks for joining us. Come back. We're done voting for 16. We'll do proportional representation next time. How's that?
Nice light topic for sure.
Exactly. Harry. Have a great weekend. Alex Cairns there, CEO of the Youth Vote and avid TikToker, I am sure. That is all we've got time for after what has been an astonishing week. I began the week in Washington, D.C. I'm going to end the week in the Dog and Duck in London Bridge. But thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. Sun Politics, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We are wherever you are, and we will be back. Thank you to our friends at Betfair for some brilliant data today, some brilliant stats. And, yeah, check out the Betfair Predicts. I'm going to be there. Second, don't forget to keep commenting. I will read out more of the comments as they come. Thank you very much.